Go.
I see the little red light, which means, folks, we are here for another episode where those of us that care gather once a week. A time where we can take a moment from our busy lives and ask people questions like, what does that mean? Or, why in the heck would you believe that? Not just those questions, but other ones too. Hopefully tonight we will have some true proof of God or a soul, the afterlife. Just, I mean, divine essence in general. Somebody give me a definition for that. I'd be thrilled. Either way, myself and Godless Engineer are taking your calls, folks. This is Skeptic Haven.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
What is up, y'all? We are here. It's November. It's 17 days into the month of November, and that is in the year of 2024. Although some days, honestly, I question whether we're in 2024 or 1824. But I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. Joining me today is an awesome man, a legend, some people say. Some other people say the greatest human being to ever exist. Now, we care about the truth here, so we will investigate those claims. But either way, it's Godless Engineer. What's up, brother?
Hi, how you doing? They say that I'm the bigliest engineer
I've
ever
heard
existed on the YouTubes.
So I have heard that before you were an engineer, right? People were telling you that they've never seen engineering like the engineering that you do. I have heard that there were multitudes gathered around you, very deeply impressed with your knowledge on it. Is that correct?
Hundreds of thousands of people. Okay, they said you're the bigliest. They're like, sir. I can't believe it.
I'm impressed. Look, I'm impressed. If nothing, even if somebody doesn't provide proof of God tonight, I still think it will be a good show because now we have been in the presence of the one and only, the bigliest of bigliest. Oh my God! Which, by the way, like, it's going to be a rough couple of years. How about that, man? But hey, who are you? What do you do? I'm sure there's somebody out there that doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, so I'm the Godless Engineer. I have a channel here on YouTube, and I also have like Facebook and Blue Sky and Threads. Like, I'm all over the place on the social media. I just try to produce content, just whatever floats through my ADHD riddled skull, and tries to put thoughts together in a coherent manner. And so yeah, I like interacting with people. I like here lately I've been posting a lot of like conversations that I've been having with folks, and trying to get started back into my daily Friday night streams. I said daily Friday night, my weekly Friday night streams. And I'm doing that, and also this coming week I'm turning 40. So, that's fun.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. That is honestly, that does feel like a big achievement these days. I feel like it's like every year that goes by, it just feels I'm surprised I'm not unaliving from just face palming so fucking hard every few minutes. I think we're far enough in now. I can say that. I don't know. Wes will yell at me probably. So you have been having these types of conversations for a long time, man. You've been doing videos and talking about Jesus and the Bible and stuff for how long now?
Well, let's see. If you go back to my channel, I think I officially started doing like regular content like 12 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and before that, I was primarily making like memes and stuff like on Facebook. And so, I think my Facebook account got above like 100,000 before I started really doing stuff on YouTube. And so it just kind of naturally progressed from there. So I kind of focus on like my video content mostly now, but I do post a good bit over there on Facebook still.
Yeah.
You know, trying to make memes and posting relevant like articles and stuff like that, trying to discuss the important issues that, you know, atheists and secular people in general face every day.
Hell yeah. Yeah. And you do a bunch of different shows. You were on Talk Heathen earlier today, weren't you?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see you on the line all the freaking time, man. It is just great to see you out there. You have a really good ability, I think, to focus in on what the caller is saying and really kind of hold them to that. Is that the engineer side of it? Is it the ADHD side of it? Is it the Southern? Where does that come from, man?
Well, I mean, that's definitely taken like that's a skill that I've definitely honed because I can easily get distracted and get off in the weeds on different topics. And so I've kind of had to train myself to really hyper focus in on certain things that we're trying to talk about. And so like if I'm talking about a certain subject and they try to throw me off like with a red herring or something like that, I try to make sure that I refocus myself. I'm like, well, but we're talking about this. I need you to answer my question. And so I try to focus on getting answers to the questions that I have rather than addressing every single point that they make, because they can gish gallop you and you can go off in the weeds and not even address the question you're supposed to be there to address. So, you know, having a laser focus in on what the topic is and what the discussion is, I think is definitely a skill that everybody can hone and continuously like grow.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things, it's, you know, just like everything, practice, right? You know, some people are just born with a little bit better kind of understanding when they sit down at a keyboard and they can maybe move around a little bit easier, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's all anybody that we look at and we just go, oh my gosh, what great talent. It's like, well, yeah, he's been doing it for 30 years. Like, you ought to know how at this point, you know? So you are known as a mythicist. Now, can I say that? Is that okay to say online? I've heard some people call it a dirty word.
No, I don't think it's a dirty word. I would say that that's accurate, you know.
Okay. What does that mean? What does being a mythicist actually entail in your eyes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would consider myself what's called a minimal mythicist. And what a minimal mythicist is what I feel to be the most academically viable type of mythicist. And that's that, you know, we take the very minimal approach to the historicity of an itinerant rabbi that we consider Jesus that started Christianity. And so what that ultimately means is that I don't think that there's enough evidence that we have in order to establish that one definitely existed. I think that the evidence that we do have is quite thin, ambiguous, and doesn't actually prove the conclusion. So much in the same way that I can't ever, like, I don't see myself saying, oh, God exists because there's a lack of evidence. Right. I feel like I'm in the same position for Jesus. I can't sit there and say, oh, Jesus definitely existed when I just don't have the evidence that convinces me that he did. I think that Jesus was a creation of some early Jewish Christians, and then Paul, you know, bought into what they were saying. And I think that it was a syncretism between mystery cults that were going around at the time and Judaism. Now, I don't think that anybody was lying about it. I think that they completely believed in it. I think that they scoured the scriptures to try to figure out like what God is telling them. And then they came up with this idea that, you know, the Savior has already come, died, resurrected, and provided this eternal salvation, just like all the other mystery cults had figured their saviors to do. And so them wholly believing in it, I think Paul believed in it too, and then he spread the religion. He changed it to kind of match what he, you know, thought, and then it just sort of, you know, ballooned from there.
Okay. So I've got some thoughts there, and I'll be honest. One reason I'm talking about this is because I know sometimes atheists get a little spicy about mythicism, and I'm just gonna kind of poke at everybody. I'm gonna hit you theists here in just a second. So give us a call, 984-789-4787. Hey, maybe GE is wrong. Maybe you can prove him wrong. I'm kind of I'm unconvinced either way. I'm kind of leaning towards his side. If you don't want me to become a dirty mythicist, you can call in right now and stop that. But so it's not that you're saying there wasn't some dude walking around that area of the world saying something that eventually maybe somebody added all this other stuff on. You're not saying that or are you? Are you saying that the Christ that we see in the Bible is an amalgamation of things, or that there was nothing really actual specific that it was ever pinned to?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on what you mean. So like there's a lot of parallels between the passion story that's in Mark and this one Jesus called Jesus ben Ananias that was killed. He was killed in a Roman conflict, and just the way in which it occurred has a lot of parallels to what happens in the Gospels. So I mean, like if you're saying that the Gospels were based on some like real physical person, like stories that they heard, maybe that could be true. I feel like a lot of the stories about Jesus definitely derive from the scriptures. The Gospels even say directly so, more so in Matthew. Mark also has some indications of that. Luke obviously does too. And then, of course, John is a much later gospel that was based on all the others. So John's was based off of that as well. I think that it's possible that there was an itinerant rabbi that walked around, but I've yet to see any compelling information, like evidence, that would lean me in that direction. It seems like all of the evidence points more so towards the Jewish Christians, these early Jewish Christians in either the first century BCE or in the first century CE, looking to syncretize the Jewish religion with mystery cults that were going around at the time. Because if you look at mystery cults, they have the exact same story structure as Jesus does. You've got this fictional central figure who's a savior, usually a son or daughter of God, who goes through a passion where they're persecuted and everything. They end up dying and they end up resurrecting and providing eternal life to those that adhere to their religion. They believe in them. They're baptized even sometimes into the faith, just like they are in Christianity. And so it seems to me like it's more likely they just saw these mystery cults and they syncretized certain elements of those mystery cults with the Jewish religion, therefore producing what we would now call Christianity.
Now some people would say here, and I've heard this from a few different individuals on the like Christian apologetic side. So they have this argument that they say proves that Jesus Christ must have been who he was, right? Because all these Jews at the time had a really, really formulaic, really, really structured religion and belief system. And to like go outside of that and become Christians, they're really changing stuff up here. Like they started adding in some wild stuff. They wouldn't do that unless he was really there, unless he was really the Messiah. Are you saying the Jewish religion at the time, as it was being practiced in that area, wasn't homogenous? Are you saying that it wasn't this single entity?
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, if you look at scholars of that period, they would definitely tell you that there was no one like Jewish sect, or there was no one interpretation of the Jewish scriptures. There was not even one like standard set of Jewish scriptures to read from. And there's obviously some scriptures that we just simply don't have now. So, I mean, to say that they were homogenous, I feel like is just disregarding all of the context of that time period. But so like if we were to say that, then we would also have to deny that Philo wrote about Moses in the same way that Paul writes about Jesus.
Ah.
Philo writes about how Moses was given a divine body by God, sent down to earth to like do all the Moses-y things in Exodus and whatnot. And then when Moses died, he actually arose back up into heaven, as opposed to like dying and being buried. He died and then rose back up into heaven in his heavenly body and everything. And so what we have is Philo seeming to step out from traditional Jewish thought. And what Philo was doing was he was trying to syncretize Judaism with like Mediterranean stuff, like Hellenizing it. And so that's when he developed his Logos idea, which, pops up in the Gospel of John much later, showing that, even Christians were considering this sort of Hellenistic version of Judaism to be what we would consider now to be, Christianity. And so what you have is a vast landscape of Jewish ideas that were going around. You had various sects, like a bunch of sects. I think it was like over 30 or so sects that were going around that had different interpretations, some of them radically different than the orthodoxy that was going around at the time. And so to say that, it was homogenous or that Jews wouldn't believe this, I feel like is espousing information that you just simply can't know. You can't know what they would or would not believe. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they believe some pretty crazy stuff. And even Christians continued that tradition with all of the crazy cults that popped up in the first century even. And so it seems to me like there was no religious idea or religious cult that would have been crazy to them. I mean, you've got like followers of atheists at that time who believed that their God was castrated. And so what they would do in order to honor their God is that they would self-castrate themselves. And so, and that was heavily looked down upon. That was, a castrated person was not exactly thought highly of at that time. And so it seems to me like, if they can be convinced to, cut their balls off, I don't see why believing in a purely celestial savior figure that accomplished everything in the firmament of the heavens, which they thought was a real physical place. Right. I don't think that that's really out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's not, right? When you put it like, look, okay, at least we can say this though. Okay. I will give this to the religious. If they want to tell me about somebody converting to a religion late in life and cutting their genitals in any way, right? I will grant that they sincerely believe it. Absolutely. No question, right? Oh, man, that is intense. There was, if I remember correctly, there was something I saw on your channel. It was because you were talking about the criterion of embarrassment and how that's not really something that is a solid, justification, right, when it comes to understandings in history. And there was a story about I'm gonna say it, human seed. If you remember this, there was something I remember. Do you remember what that story was and why you brought it up to as another example as like, hey, this was something else wacky that's going on in that time.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? What?
Yeah.
Did you tell our audience what that was?
So that's that was actually, I got that from Bart Ehrman's book. Maybe it was Lost Christianities or something like that. Anyways, Bart Ehrman records in that we have evidence of a certain cult that believed that Jesus, and this was all part of their fertility rituals, and this is how they justified a lot of their ritualistic stuff. They envisioned Jesus as taking Mary Magdalene up on the side of like a mountain. And then in front of Mary, he would proceed to pull a newly formed woman out of his ribs, right? And stark naked, laid her down, and then raped said woman right in front of Mary Magdalene, ejaculated inside of her. And when he got done, he reached inside, pulled out his ejaculate, and then looked at Mary, dead in the face and was like, do this in remembrance of me, or something of that nature. And, and then, that was just it. That was the entire ritual. And, and so, like, I feel like this whole criterion of embarrassment is not considering the vast swaths of like what we would consider to be embarrassing now, especially in religious context, because like religion has this way about it that it can get people to believe in some of the most ridiculous stuff,
Right.
like, after you ejaculate inside of a woman, pulling out your ejaculate as like a ritual to like, appease him or something. So like that would be embarrassing to us. Like we would be, I know at least I would be embarrassed to like admit to my coworker, like, yeah, I mean, Jesus, he wants us to pull the nut out of our wives. I don't know why, but it's
so let me
something Matthew 69.
Oh my god.
And so like I feel like I would be embarrassed. Most people would be embarrassed now, but it's kind of like, would they have been embarrassed? So like when everybody says when somebody says, oh, this would have been embarrassing for them, it's like, well, how do you know it would have been embarrassing?
Yeah,
that
wasn't.
Yeah, we do have evidence in the Gospels of embarrassing things being changed, and we can infer that they were embarrassing because of the fact that later Christians added stuff and took things out. So like a good for instance of this is the longer ending to Mark. So like we have manuscripts where Mark stops at I think like verse 8, I believe. And then we have later manuscripts like in the 2nd or 3rd century that add in the longer ending. And there's actually a couple different longer endings. There's one long ending and then there's an even longer ending. But what we know is that it was added later in order to give some kind of post-resurrection account. Now, why would this be? Well, it kind of seemed like they were at least unhappy about the fact that Mark does not contain any post-resurrection appearances.
Right.
Other gospels do. So it kind of seemed like maybe it might have been an embarrassing fact that Mark doesn't record these things. And so they added in post-resurrection accounts. So we have instances of that, of things being added because it wasn't aligning with the rest of their gospels. So I mean there is evidence that they were embarrassed by things, but the evidence comes in the form of, oh well, these things were changed because they didn't like it,
right
kind of thing.
Not just something that seems odd to us that's written down that these people supposedly believed. That is a core methodology for coming up with the conclusion, hey, they were probably like really embarrassed about that. It's like, yeah, I don't know that that's true, man. They talked about a lot of weird stuff, and just so everybody knows, we here at Skeptic Haven do not kink shame. Consenting adults can do what consenting adults want to do, and all agree to. I will say though, if you're eating your ejaculate because God exists, give us a call. We'll talk about that with you. maybe change your mind.
Justify it for us, please.
Yeah, justify it, right. Yeah, justify it, Daddy. Okay. All right. We actually have a call, folks. We will take this call. I swear this won't completely run off the rails. And if you want to call us, you can do it. It's really easy. See right there above the screen and then down below. It's all right there. It's very simple. I feel like you can read, but if not, I'll say it real quick. 984-789-4787. Whatever. You got it. We are going out to California. We are going to talk with Batar. He, him is a theist. Did I say that right, Batar?
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, awesome. Well, you were chatting with Godless Engineer and Secular Rarity. What's up, man? What you got?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I'm just curious, like, what the reply is supposed to be to the Bayesian fine-tuning argument, right? Because I take it to be the sort of powerful argument, right, in showing that theism is true. And I'm not really, like, convinced by any of the atheist replies, right? And if you need me to, I could just outline what the argument exactly is, right?
Are you saying the fine-tuning? Hang on, real quick, Batar. Are you saying the fine-tuning argument?
No, so I'm talking about the Bayesian variant of the fine-tuning argument, right? Because there's deductive versions that people like Craig will offer, right?
Sure.
That I won't accept.
Okay, go for it. Give us the Bayesian. Go ahead. I know what I'm going to say probably at the end of it, but go ahead. I mean, give it to us.
Yeah, I mean, look, first, it's probably helpful, right, to just define what Bayes' theorem is, right? It's just that the probability of A given B is equal to the probability of B given A times the probability of A divided by the probability of B, right? Now, if that's understood, right, what will follow from that, right, is kind of the basic point, right, with respect to evidence, right? So if we have in the background, right, that if E is more probable on H1 than H2, then E supports H1 over H2, then what the theist would have to show, right, for life-permitting conditions to be evidence for theism, right? It's just that the presence of life-permitting conditions is more probable on theism than it is on naturalism.
Right. If I cut
have
in
an argument,
Avatar real quick, just because I want to make sure that we don't go so high level or so nuanced that we lose everybody. I'll let you know exactly where I come from, which is this, like, Bayesian analysis isn't exactly the thing that I spend all my time doing. I've listened to many of folk talk about it. I would say GE actually has a little bit more understanding of Bayes. I feel like that's pretty important when it comes to mythicism and Dr. Carrier's work and stuff. So I'm pretty sure that he comes to a slightly different conclusion there. And I guess what I'm going to poke at is this. Is why does GE using that analysis, why does he come to a radically different conclusion than you?
I can tell you.
Yeah, because as I said, right, it doesn't follow from the correctness alone of the sort of Bayesian analysis of probability, right, that theism is true. What I did say specifically, right, which maybe wasn't picked up, is that you have to think that the probability, right, of life-permitting conditions given theism is higher than the probability of life-permitting conditions given naturalism, right? And so if that's true, then the life-permitting conditions favor theism over naturalism, right? With the trivial point I made about evidence in mind, right?
Well,
now,
yeah, sure, but if I can interrupt here, I mean, you can literally make any proposition more likely as long as you insert a magical wizard.
That's where I was going to say from the beginning.
Yeah, but then
so no, hold on, because like I can say one second, hold on, let me just flesh this out, okay? So I can say like a Godzilla walking around Palestine in the 1st century is far more likely, if a magical wizard conjured him there than on any kind of naturalistic sort of perspective, right? Or you could say that, if a magical wizard exists and wanted to, then it could snow in Palestine. Let's take it out of the realm of like ridiculous like Godzilla stuff, and let's make it a little bit more reasonable, because this year, where was it in the Middle East that got snow for the first time? So it's it's very likely that snow could happen there. And it's far more likely if you have a magical wizard conjuring snow than for a natural situation, right? Would you agree to that?
You're right. So that's just noting a trivial point, which is that you can build it into a hypothesis that there's this expectation, right? But the problem is,
totally. So
you agree with GE?
Yeah, so I mean, you think that the fine-tuning argument, inserting a magical wizard in order to make more sense, does not actually make sense, right?
Well, no, so that's a blunder there, right? Because it doesn't follow, right, from me thinking there's lower priors in the wizard case that I think that there's lower priors in the theism case, right? I'm indifferent between theism.
Why? What's the difference on the lower priors? Like all religious people are doing, religious apologists are doing. Hold on. All religious apologists are positing a supernatural wizard that exists outside of time and space. Whereas I'm positing a very real wizard based inside time and space that is conjuring the precipitation at that point. So like, if you really want to think about it, like a human wizard conjuring snow in Palestine in the 1st century CE is far more likely than God doing it.
Yeah, humans exist. We know things operate on the constraints of time and space. We've never got any demonstration of anything that's outside time and space. So,
yeah, we can move to that little point afterwards. But I just want to note, you asked me, what is the difference? What I said is that I use the principle of indifference. I don't know how exactly you got that question out there. But as for the point,
so wait, Wait. Stop.
Right,
I'm
well,
an idiot.
presumably,
Stop. Batar,
yeah,
I'll
well,
mute you. I can just do it. Like, you probably heard a beep right there, okay? I'm gonna click the button again and it's gonna unmute you, but I know because you're a decent human being, you're gonna let me finish my point here in just a second, okay? So you probably hear that beep again. You're unmuted, but you're gonna wait just a second because you're a good person. Hey, Batar, I'm kind of an idiot. I don't really understand this Bayes theorem analyses. I don't really get it. It sounded to me just a second ago when GE said, like, hey, you posit a supernatural wizard and I posit a wizard that is constrained by the laws of time and space and physics and stuff. You said there, it sounded to me like you said there's no difference between those things. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
yeah, no, so that wasn't the point, right?
Right,
You
I know,
probably-
I'm an idiot. No, Batar, I'm an idiot. You can help me. You have an opportunity here to teach me.
Yeah,
So this,
so
I'm
that makes
genuinely confused here because it sounded to me almost like
Yeah,
you
then you're
said
correct.
there's no difference between GE's wizard and your wizard. And if I've got that wrong, explain
So
it.
that's actually not what I said. That's not what I said. So what I
Right.
said is that I applied the principle of indifference between theism and naturalism. That's not to say that the wizard hypothesis, right, is no
So you-
different from, the God hypothesis. That would just be to
Cool.
misunderstand what indifference is.
Awesome. I think I
Yeah.
understand now, but the problem is if I'm understanding correctly, you didn't answer GE's question and you just moved on to something different. And I'd love for you to go answer that because I think that's kind of important.
Well, he asked the question. So he asked the question, what is the difference? And by the way, that question actually came after my explication of the difference, right? Which is just that one hypothesis has lower priors by virtue of its specificity, right? Where I take, perfect being theism to be quite a simpler hypothesis, right? In the Swinburnian sense, right? So I think there's a symmetry
it's not.
breaker, right? With respect to there being that property in one case and not another.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
The
Yeah.
entire
Well,
argument, the entire argument rests on a big if, and that's if a god exists. So if you want to take the whole magical wizard part out of it, that's fine. I feel like I feel like God is a wizard in this respect. But
what do you think, Batar?
so
Wait,
like if
wait.
just positing a god, saying, well, if a god exists, then it makes more sense.
Which is just really quickly, you said that it relies on if, which is that this God exists, but in the arguments I provided, there actually was no conditional, or the antecedent of the conditional was God exists. So that's kind of another blunder on your end, right? That's not a commitment to the argument.
No. I'm not blundering anything. You're coming to a conclusion based on a specious argument that God exists.
Yeah.
Like your argument automatically assumes that God exists and says that it's more likely on the naturalistic, like versus a naturalistic perspective. So like your particular argument is already suffering from the ad hoc nature of it.
Right. See, that's what I was feeling. It sounded to me like what your objection was earlier, GE. And tell me if I'm just not, because again, I'm happy to admit that y'all are smarter than me. That doesn't really bother me. I'll sleep fine tonight, I promise. Y'all know more about this. So I'm just trying to learn, okay? But it sounded to me like what you were saying a minute ago, John, was essentially something in the vein of like, yeah, man, but if one of your prior probabilities to get to this conclusion is just already accepting that there's this magical wizard that can do anything, well, of course we get there, and we just that's not a viable method to reaching conclusions. And then that was where we got into the whole, like, you have a wizard that's outside of space and time, and John and I have a wizard that's inside space and time thing. Am I tracking that at the very least, man? Am I sort of on the right page?
No, you actually aren't. And I don't think my reply to Godless there. There should have really been paywalled behind your monologue, right? So to be clear, right, Godless.
I'm sorry, just for a second there, I wasn't sure if this was your show or my show. Oh, that's right. You can't fucking respond because you're muted right now. So go ahead and get all uppity. Ride in on whatever tall horse you want to, Batar. We got all the fucking control. You can just look like a dumb little idiot just sitting there fuming and stamping your little feet if you want. Or you can be a decent person and have a conversation with us. I'm happy that I'm an idiot. I'm perfectly fine with that. I already agreed to that, man. You don't have to keep trying to get little digs in every now and then. Just explain yourself. Answer the question directly. You absolutely refused, based on your own admission earlier, to answer GE's very simple question. Now, we moved on. I'm cool with that. But I would love for you to just explain. You're going to have the time. You're going to have the floor. I'm going to unmute you here in just a second. If you get a little attitude again, like a child, I'm okay with just leaving you on mute and seeing how long you can hold. It's fun for me. So here you go. You got the time. Go ahead.
I mean, just relax, right? I don't think I'm going to uppity, right? Because you just kind of went on this monologue, right?
Oh no. You got muted again. It's crazy. Oh no. All the things you wanted to say, you'd prepared for them. You're so excited. You're a big boy now. Hey, man, just talk to us. Just talk to us. You're going to come back on in a second. Just be an adult. You can do it. I feel confident. I feel really confident. Okay? You ready? You're going to hear a beep. Go ahead.
We can just call that.
I'm an idiot. Batar. Batar. I'm an idiot. Explain it to me. Help me out. Okay? Help me out.
Yeah,
Help me understand.
Are we headed for breakdown number 4? Yeah, so now that breakdown number 4 is over, right? I gave a very basic explanation of Bayes' theorem, right? Now, if you didn't track such an explanation, I mean, I just take that to be a problem on your end. But now, you said that GE understands, right, what Bayes' theorem is. But there's a little problem there, right? Which is that you didn't understand basic points about priors, right? And then made the whole blunder with the wizard case, right? And then to kind of rescue your friend.
No. Hold on. I'm so sorry. You're shit talking me, and so I feel the need to respond real quick. So one thing if you really want to go through an in-depth explanation of how you fucked up, so you went through this entire explanation where you just laid out some kind of English language explanation of Bayes' theorem, and then just postulated that these things hold certain priors, but you didn't actually justify your priors. What's your justification for God existing, for one, that makes that prior probability more likely than just natural shit existing? That's your main problem, and that's where we've been trying to point out to you that you have a problem, is that your entire argument relies on this prior probability of God existing, because that's what the argument actually relies on. So can you please give us this prior probability? Give us a number. Pull a number out of your asshole. Ooh. I don't care. That is going to illuminate where you're fucking up at.
I mean, so there's a little error there, which is you said I gave some like English language explanation of Bayes' theorem, but I actually gave a mathematical explanation. Right now,
there was no math in that. You did not give us any kind of numbers. You didn't. You just described something as being more likely.
Yeah. It sounded like you used the English language, but I would say that it's particularly hilarious to me, Batar, that in an opportunity to actually respond with anything meaningful, you purposefully chose not to. I just think that's fascinating. Look, I'm the dipshit of this conversation. Out of the three of us, I'm the least intelligent, but I've been tracking the whole fucking time, and apparently you haven't. And that's hilarious to me. So once again, Batar, here we go. Here's your opportunity. I'm an idiot. GE actually has some knowledge on this, it sounds like. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's also an idiot. Hey, I don't know. Convince me. He said, it sounded like, tell me if I'm wrong, GE. It sounded like what you were saying is there's a problem with one of the things that you're using in your calculation to get to the conclusion about like God existing. And that thing is the likelihood of God existing to begin with. So provide us some information to accept that it's that high of a likelihood. Am I tracking?
Yes.
Awesome. Batar, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so there's this kind of basic thing that could have been inferred, which is that I said I'm indifferent, which just means that I think there's a prior probability of 0.5. Right now, the fact that, there had to be some question.
The reason I muted you is because as an idiot in this conversation, I feel like you responding with, yeah, it could go fucking either way, doesn't really indicate that there is a higher likelihood that that thing should be utilized in this equation. GE, help me. It sounded like what he said, it's a 50-50, straight up and down, so it literally could go either way.
Yeah, and I feel like that is an extremely liberal estimate, like on the religious person's part, like on the a deity creating everything and like fine-tuning everything and whatnot. Because if we think about it, if we consider all of the natural phenomena that we've attributed to God and then later reversed and said, oh no, it was actually this natural thing, that this natural phenomena that we've been able to explain and understand. Like you can point to anything, lightning, tectonic plate shifting, like all of that has natural explanations. That means that a natural explanation for like the universe existing, why the properties are the way that they are, naturally have a higher likelihood than magical supernatural magician that exists outside of space and time, right?
Man,
so like if just doing the mental math on it, like not even literal math, but just the mental, like working through like the prior probabilities of both, what you would need in this situation is massive amounts of evidence to overcome the prior of the magical magician that exists outside of reality, because that's going to be incredibly low, because nothing that we have has been able to explain it. But if you're saying that the natural, like fine-tuned properties of this universe are explained better under that, then you would need a massively strong amount of evidence to overcome the prior probability. That's what you need.
So if I'm tracking, what you're saying is provide even one example where we thought something was a natural process or a natural explanation, but actually had an explanation that was God. Is that like
yeah? The explanation, the explanation is better on a God explanation than a natural one.
Okay, I am with training wheels on this, Batar. Okay, you have to help me. I am like a 5-year-old here. Help me understand this. I got you back on. Where is GE wrong?
On my wrist because you went on for about 3 minutes there. Yeah, I mean.
Hey, Batar. Hey, man. Let me ask you a question. Do you know where the fuck you are? It's not a Wendy's. You're on a call-in show. You can talk to us if you want. You can also just hang the fuck up and go do whatever you want to do with your life. I didn't know you existed until about 18 minutes and 10 seconds ago. You know how I know that? Because the program that you called in on tracks the length of the call. If you're going to explain to us how call-in shows work, honestly, I'm just going to go back to asking GE questions about mythicism, because I find that really interesting. And I don't know where I fall on that. I'm just going to do that. And I'm just going to see if I can piss off an atheist or two in the process, okay? I think you're a real person. I really do. I feel really confident that you can have a conversation with us. It sounded to me like what GE was saying a minute ago was something along the lines of, hey, man, we've got all this prior evidence that seems to indicate natural. Never once have we gotten this information that indicates non-natural, which would be necessary to conclude that the probability that God's a thing and can do all this Jesus-y stuff and make the world and whatnot, that's going to make that lower, right? We need something. Help us out here, Batar. Help me understand this, okay? I'm going to bring you back on. I want to talk with you, genuinely. Okay. I have these conversations on a regular basis in my local area, but apparently you are having massive difficulty with the absolute basics of being an adult. Now, if you aren't 18, Batar, you just tell us right now, because I ain't going to talk to a fucking child, but I feel like you're an adult, so let's have a conversation. Help me understand where GE is wrong with what he just said. I know it was a lot. If you need a quick recap, I bet you he could do it in like 30 seconds. Do you want a recap, or do you want to just respond and help me?
Yeah, I guess I'll respond, but I do think it's quite strange how the self-proclaimed atheist is getting 90% of the talking time. Right, and these kinds of monologues there. But
I don't think you really understand how call-in shows work, man. You're given an opportunity to speak, so speak. If you're just going to call in and say, like, man, it's crazy that most of this show is not me talking. Yeah, dude, figure out how industry works. I'm sorry that you haven't figured out radio. I want to say we got that way a while ago, man. So come on, be an adult. You can do this. I feel very confident in you. Explain to me what GE was wrong about. It sounds to me like what he said made sense.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the, 1 minute there, the little paywall right behind replying to what was said. Now, as for the problem with GE's view, right, what I said is that the prior distribution is even. Now, it's not going to follow that the probabilities are even, right, because there's probabilities that aren't prior probabilities, right, and there's also updated priors. So it could be that the sort of evidence of fine-tuning, which is just what the argument appeals to, right, is going to favor, the theist hypothesis over the naturalist hypothesis. And then, what was said further is that there has to be some evidence that's quote-unquote overwhelming. But recall, if we're assuming indifference between the two hypotheses, which, as I said, I take to be pretty well motivated, right, especially if, you come from an objective Bayesian ilk, right, is, it doesn't have to be that strong, really. It just has to be, but, even so, it's still true that the fine-tuning...
Have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart, Batar? Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, the one and only Son of God the Father Almighty, into your heart? Answer me honestly, because he'll know if you're lying. Have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart?
Yeah, I'm not a Christian, no. I'm giving a case for theism. I don't know what you're on about.
Awesome. Then you'll burn in hell with the rest of us. Absolutely worthless. You got an opportunity to respond directly. And GE, did he say anything? Did he say anything that seemed to address that?
No, I didn't hear any kind of evidence. I just heard a lot of bitching about my requirements for his evidence. So like, I didn't hear anything compelling. No.
Ugh, my God. Hey, look, man, I'm glad, Batar, that your God doesn't torture people for all eternity, although maybe he does if he's not the Christian God, maybe not. I'm glad you don't have to worry about that, man, because if you were a follower of Christ, I'm going to be honest with you, I'd have laughed in your fucking face. I'd have laughed in your face. This is what brings you to your belief in God. This, you can't even respond to a direct question. GE asked for one little bit, anything whatsoever, where after scrutinizing, investigating, double frickin' fucking checking everything, god damn it, never once has it come to anything other than, oh yeah, man, it's his natural thing. Just anything, bro. That was the question. You had all this time and you did nothing. I'm glad you're not a Christian, man, because the Bible says that you'd be cast aside as a fucking goat who never knew Jesus, and you'd be tortured in hell. I don't think that's real. Good news for you. Good news for me. But man, what a belief. What a belief, man. I hope your God doesn't actually give a shit if you fight for him or anything. Fucking hell. Do you want to keep talking, GE? I mean, he's still technically on the line. I don't know. He hasn't said anything for a minute. You want to keep talking?
I'll leave that up to you.
Well, am I muted? I mean, I just assume I'm muted during the monologues.
No, you've been live. You can hear a beep. I know you can, and I know you know that because I've been on the call side of it. So I know you're faking when you just said that. See, watch this, watch it. Oh, you just heard the beep, and I know you know that that's true. I muted you. Man, look. I don't think you're ready for these conversations. I'm just going to be honest. And that's a shitty thing for me to say. That's bad. I shouldn't say that to you, Batar. Again, I think you're probably an intelligent, compassionate human being who does good things in your daily life. I don't think you've really thought about this shit well enough. Because as a dipshit, as somebody that really, honestly, you guys, I did calculus quite a long time ago, and I sure don't remember any fucking shit about it at all. Okay? Derivatives are cool, but I don't know how to do them. And I'm telling you, man, even I'm tracking this conversation, and I'm sitting over here going, hey, Batar, I don't think you've responded to this at all. So I don't know where else to go, man. I'm just gonna be real. I don't know where else to go with this. GE, do you have any other thoughts? I mean, I know it's I feel like
I feel like a lot of people misunderstand the usefulness of Bayes' theorem and how that can be used like for different arguments. And I feel like, as I've shown here, if anybody comes at you with Bayes' theorem proving something about God, like, you know, the fine tuning of the universe and all this other stuff, you have to understand that they're working off of a prior probability, and that's going to speak volumes to, you know, analyzing the evidence. Because in order for him to come to the conclusion that, oh, it makes more sense on a God existing than not existing, you have to set your prior probability as well as the evidence to such a high degree that it overcomes the naturalistic perspective. And that's just, you know, doing it in your head. Like, that's just saying, oh, this, like, in a, do you know what Likert scales are?
I don't. No, please help me.
So you have you ever been through one of those forums where it's like, oh, is this more likely, less likely, just as likely? Those are called Likert scales. And they're meant to judge like likelihoods and probabilities, right? So
makes sense.
Yeah, if you, in your mind, you can visualize those kind of scales for the evidence, right? What he's saying is that it's like the existence of God is 50-50, right? And between naturalistic explanations and God explanations, it's right there at 50-50. And that is an extreme over-exaggeration considering all of the evidence in our background information. That is where the argument fucks up. And the use of Bayes' theorem allows you to actually hone in on where the problem starts. This is the same thing as like when you start like a really complicated math problem. And I've had math problems that I've spent all weekend trying to do. If you fuck up in the very first steps of your problem, then you're going to get shit output. Right. This is the same thing for all of mathematics. So his problem starts at the very beginning and he ends up getting a shit output. And the same thing can be said for any of these kinds of arguments using Bayes. Bayes just allows you to identify where the fuck up is.
Okay. I think I am tracking, and I am excited because I love that moment when it is obvious that I don't fucking understand something, and then I start to have that, you know, the lifting of the fog moment. Okay. So what you're saying is not necessarily that utilizing Bayes' theorem gets us to a solid yes or no, more so that the process of using Bayes' theorem is to help you evaluate the assumptions that you're bringing into the equation that leads you to your conclusion. How justified am I to hold these assumptions?
Right. And it can give you a probabilistic sense of like how likely a conclusion is.
Okay.
And then from there you can make different, you know, arguments like for what I do with Jesus existing or not existing, like Bayes would seem to indicate that Jesus more likely than not didn't exist.
Sure.
But then you know, I make my own considerations of the evidence that's provided. And in this particular situation, the fuck up is happening in the prior probability stage and not where we're even considering any kind of evidence.
Okay. Well, look, Batar, you're still on the line. I've had you muted the whole time, and I know you know that because you didn't hear a beep. I think the last few minutes that GE just laid out is easy to follow. I think the criticism that he is providing for what you've brought to us today is easy to follow. I fully believe that you can call me back with an answer to that, because I think you're a decent person. I really do. I think you're probably pretty intelligent, probably a fairly nice guy. Most people in your life probably enjoy when you're around. So I know that you can do this. I don't think you did a fantastic job tonight, but that's okay. I was also kind of a dick. And you know what? I'll take the opportunity just to say, I'm sorry, man. My bad. I was kind of a dick. Call me back, Batar. And when you call me back, I want you to say to the call screener, because, I mean, you don't have to. You do whatever the fuck you want with your life. But if you genuinely care about this, if this is actually something that interests you, I want you to listen to those last few minutes that GE was just explaining and call me back with an answer and tell the call screener specifically, because I'm friends with the call screener. You can say to them, hey, SR called my ass out. I'm going to show him up. I want to talk about Bayes' theorem. We'll put you right at the top. I'm serious, man. I want to have this conversation. I learned something tonight, and I'm very, very excited by that. I want that to happen again. And if you're right, Batar, I want to fucking hear it. I don't want to be this dipshit believing that God's not real because I don't understand Bayes' theorem. I feel like I get it a bit more now. And I think I think GE has some good points there. So call me back. Call me back, man. Seriously, I mean it. You can find me all the places. John, too. We out there all the time. Neither of us are shying away from any of these discussions, man. We want to have this. If we are presented with something that adjusts our prior probability, we'll do that. I get a lot more of that, John. I get a lot more of that where it's like, hey, man, I have a problem with this specific thing right here. And the response is, well, I don't think you're paying attention to the thing I want you to pay attention to. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, maybe not, man. But help me out.
Yeah, I feel like that's the mark of somebody that doesn't fully understand like the argument that they're trying to make, and they just want people to believe what they're saying instead of actually trying to justify it. Because I mean, I get it that, you know, at first he was just kind of colloquially talking about it, and that's perfectly fine. But then we tried to get into the deeper nuances of Bayes' theorem and like how likely he thinks some things are. And that's where we were able to identify, like, you know, where the problem was. And that's in, you know, stating that, oh, you know, God is equally as likely as existing as not.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is the biggest misstep in the calculation.
Right. And I think that's a really good. This is something that I've always really. I have a lot of teachers in my close family. I mean, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, all that shit. Right. A lot of them. A lot of us are involved in education. One of the things I have thought is always at the pinnacle of education is the ability to take difficult concepts and break them down in a manner that the uneducated can understand. That's the whole point, right? And I felt like there was a moment there where he wanted to spit a lot of big words. He wanted to spit a lot of concepts. And then when I came in and I was like, hey man, look, I don't really look. John's tracking. Okay, he understands all those words. I need help with the definition on number 2. Okay, I didn't feel like I got a good breakdown. I didn't feel like I understood exactly. Like if somebody said to me, hey man, I don't understand how a car moves. Like I get that you turn the engine on and I get that it has wheels, but I don't really get how a car moves. I would go, oh yeah, I don't really get it either. But basically we take this liquid that has a lot of potential energy in it and we make a controlled explosion that causes these other levers and wheels to move and spin. And those are all connected to the wheels that then start to turn because of that pressure. Somebody could go, oh yeah, man, I guess I kind of get an internal combustion engine now, you know? So I guess what I'm getting at there is just that I get frustrated with people when I'm genuinely saying to someone like, I don't understand this. I'm happy to tell you that Bayes' theorem is not the thing that I deal with a lot of. Teleological argument, Kalam, Cosma, fuck it. Yeah, man, I'm with it. I'll talk to you for hours about that shit. Bayes' theorem, I'm going to be honest, man, that's not my strong suit. So when somebody responds to me in that conversation and isn't able to say like, yeah, here's the 5-year-old version of that, I feel like maybe you don't understand it as much as you think. You know, is that wrong? Am I assuming too much of people?
Well, no, I don't think you're assuming too much. I feel like it can illuminate either they don't really understand the argument or they're banking on your ignorance of the argument in order to convince you of their presentation of it. And so I feel like it's one of the two. And in religious discussions, I feel like more often than not, they're banking on a person's ignorance rather than them being informed, because I feel like anybody that's informed is going to understand how wrong the argumentation is.
Yeah.
So it's like it only works on those that are uninformed.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I try to argue against people that try to present Bayes' theorem as being flawed in this respect, because we actually use Bayes' theorem in a number of different applications across like industries and everything like that, even in the military. And so like Bayes' theorem is very useful, and it's even been tracked. There's actually been a study where they tracked the progression of Moses, I guess, ahistoricity.
Oh, yeah.
Like the progression from Moses being considered to be a fully historical person in the past, all the way up to what that now is the consensus that Moses and the other patriarchs did not exist.
Right.
And it follows a Bayesian method. And what that means is that as we gained information about the text, about the culture, and as we just gained more and more background information and compared that to the evidence for his existence, it eventually, like if you plotted it on a graph, it got to the point where ahistoricity is more likely than historicity. And so like Bayesian analysis can be used on history. It really takes a good solid use of like estimation of these probabilities if you really wanted to do it like on a mathematical basis. But you don't even need exact numbers in order to do these things, because you can, like I said, in your mind, you can visualize those Likert scales, right? And you can actually, just like if you have so many things that are like, oh, this is completely unlikely, 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 and you have all these things are unlikely, and then when you get to your evidence and they're like mediocre or not like likely, then you can be pretty secure in assuming that, well, this probably isn't the actual explanation, or this isn't the conclusion. It would take a monumental amount of evidence in order to overcome that. And what that means, like when we're talking about this, is that like you have to have evidence that is far more likely on every aspect in order to overcome such a low prior probability. And so like as long as you keep that kind of in mind, and you can kind of keep a running tally of like, what's my evidence, what's the background information on it, and how does that evidence that we have compare to that background information? Like, is it overwhelming? Like, does this evidence overwhelm the background information about it?
Yeah.
Or is it underwhelming? Like you can make sort of like, estimations on that. And what this allows us to do is really hone in, on the evidence of where people are misjudging the evidence. So like, for instance, apologists, they would place a high probability on the background information about either God or Jesus or any of these arguments that they use. If you were to analyze them like in a Bayesian way, they would put high probabilities on either the background evidence, background information, or on the evidence that they have. But knowing which pieces of evidence that they consider to be more likely, like vastly more likely on God than on naturalism, I think can illuminate like exactly where they're wrong in their estimations.
Right. And honestly, it sounds like to me, and tell me if this makes sense to you, because this will let me know whether or not I'm following along or not. It almost sounds very much in the same vein as Descartes' apple cart and Hume's argument against accepting miracles. It's that the idea that a miracle has occurred has to be so crazy likely, like that everybody else is wrong. Like you're telling me that that is less likely, that all of these people are wrong. And then the same with Descartes about this. You take all of your beliefs, you throw them all out, and you only bring the ones back in that have really solid foundation. And that seems like a a through line to me through all of those different ideas. Am I somewhat on the right place there?
Yeah, no, I think that you can use both of those concepts like to really visualize what I'm talking about with Bayes. Because like if we were to bring in all of the solid evidence that would point towards either a god or like a god being necessary for the fine tuning of the universe, I feel like you would have a pretty empty cart. You know, and so I feel like that because if you were to compare the carts in this particular analogy here for the like fine tuning, you would have the apologists that have just a plethora of apples in their cart, but you know, where they would see them as perfectly ripe apples, we would see them as, you know, not ripe, like rotting apples or whatever. And so like that highlights the differences between the two. And like a lot of apologists like to try to blame it on us, like, oh, you have too high a standards, like you don't want worms and like rotting apples in your stuff, like you get too high of a requirement there. It's like, is it really our fault for requiring evidence that would actually prove your conclusion, or is it your fault for bringing us a proposition that seems incredibly unlikely in the beginning that requires an immense amount of evidence in order to prove it? Like, you need both of the like it's not our fault that you're bringing us a ridiculous proposition that requires a lot of evidence. Like that's a you thing.
Right. Or that you've lowered the bar to such a ridiculous degree. Low bar bill, right? I mean, William Lane Craig came out and just straight up said it. He's like, look, man, 1 in 100 million or whatever. Like, I'd fucking believe it. It's like, well, shit, man. If your bar's that low, of course, everything's going to meet that standard. The problem is, though, that now you have all these competing claims. That is the exact same low bar for Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism. I can keep listing. Like, why would you ever, in any scenario whatsoever, and I'm talking to y'all out there, why would you ever want to lower your bar that low? Seriously. Would you accept that low of a standard when it came to whether or not your child is receiving the proper medical care? Would you accept that low bar of a standard as to whether or not your car starts tomorrow so that you can go to work on time? No, you wouldn't. That's the big thing that I always see. I feel that consistency is genuinely one of the most important things out there. We have to have some kind of consistency. If we don't have consistency, then A doesn't equal A. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not me, you're not you. I don't know what to do. If every time we put the equation out there, 1 + 1 =, if every time it can just be something different, I don't get how we do math. That's not me saying that it can't be that way, okay? I'm not saying that, you guys. I'm just saying genuinely, like, if that's what you think the world is, like, help me. Like, I want to understand that. If I'm just a dipshit on that and I'm not getting that, like, if 1 doesn't always have to equal 1, awesome. Like, tell me, show me. I would love to learn. But so far, it just feels like every single time we're in this exact same boat, man, where ultimately at the end of the day, there isn't anything solid for us to point to in the same manner of all the other conclusions that we accept about reality. And I don't know, maybe my standard just is too high, but I gotta be honest. It's kind of like that person who's standing there as I'm cooking chicken for the public and just says to me, I think it's close enough. It's probably done. I don't know, man. It's still kind of rubbery and raw in the middle. It's like, nah, it's probably fine. Go ahead. I'm just not going to do that. I'm just not going to drop my standard. Maybe that's wrong, and maybe I'll burn in hell. But
No, that's definitely not raw. Don't eat raw chicken.
don't eat raw chicken. Right.
Make sure that shit's cooked to 165 at least.
Exactly, folks. Look, if you walked away from this episode not learning a fucking thing else, you learned 165 internal temperature is the proper temperature to cook your chicken. Hey, man, I had a really good time. I had a really good time hanging out with you, man.
I'm sorry I couldn't attract more callers tonight, but it was great, talking with you and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I totally get like not being sold on like the mythicism position and all that other kind of stuff. I don't blame people for that. Although I do get a lot of crap thrown my way generally for it. But I don't do the same thing for anybody else. I mean, I think that it's totally reasonable to be skeptical about it and everything like that. I know that I was. What caused me to like really go deep in on it and hyper fixate on it for a little bit was just I had someone challenge me, be like, oh well, obviously there's evidence for Jesus. I went to try to find it and I just couldn't find it, and that sent me down this path of like questioning it, trying to find the evidence, trying to understand and hearing both sides. And it just seems like, to me at least, the mythicist side seems to win out. And that's just the way that I see it. Yeah.
And I will say, and look, maybe I'll make some enemies on this, but I'm okay with it. I will plant this flag. You and David Fitzgerald are my two favorite fucking mythicists out there. Every time I see you guys doing something, every time I'm listening to you, I just feel like it is always a good talk, and I greatly enjoy it. So maybe guys, maybe Skeptic Haven folks, maybe one day I will come on here and the three of us will do a big mythicist stream or something. Maybe we'll grab Dr. Carrier too. But I love hanging out with you, man. I love seeing you do stuff because I am just always so excited every single time I see another one of us, hick Southerners, out there talking about how Jesus don't exist and shit and whatnot. I love it. I love it, man. Seriously, I know everybody already knows, but tell everybody where they can find you so that they go. And I'm just gonna say it. Look, I'll be straight up about it. Look, send him some money. It's real easy. Y'all can send us some money too. That's real easy. We make it. We got Patreon. We got like just YouTube, subscribe and shit. Come on, y'all. Go out there, hang out with him.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can never get right here. So that's my engineering degree. I've got two.
Oh,
I don't need money, but if send Skeptic Haven here money and Secular Rarity, send them money. But you can find me on YouTube. Just YouTube is mainly where I'm posting my stuff. Although Facebook, I've got facebook.com/Godless Engineering is there. We've also got a group on Facebook that's associated with the page. It's just it's the same name, Godless Engineering, on the groups. And so we got that, and then the various social medias. Wherever you're at, you can look up Godless Engineer and you'll be able to find me. But really, I just this is a thing I do for fun, like on the side kind of thing. So that I feel like that makes me not different, but I feel like that's why I've been able to do it for so long is because like this is something that I do for the pure enjoyment of it. Like I love engaging with people. I love engaging with the community. And so I feel like that's what's going to keep me in it, even when I reach 50 or even beyond. Definitely support Skeptic Haven here before you start supporting me.
All right. Well, y'all heard it. Okay. Y'all heard it, and we're going to clip the hell out of that and just post it every fucking where. But seriously, before we go, I, of course, have to thank our wonderful patrons. They are scrolling on the screen right now. Paul Cammish, Karen Butcher, Puck, Helen, Greene, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Ozels, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sonny Shell, Aaron Colson, holy crap, I didn't think I would get to the end, and Phil Calderone. It's gotten longer, you guys. I really, really appreciate the crap out of y'all. Every single one of y'all help make this happen. Y'all allow us to have all of the wonderful shows that we have every single week. I did a terrible job, but our producer is amazing, and he's already gotten the shows up. On Monday, we've got the Black Free Thinkers. On Thursday, the Sunny Spot. Saturday is the Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload. And then, of course, every Sunday right here on Let's Talk. Seriously, y'all, everybody out there, whether you're watching us live or you're watching us on the replay and stuff, thank you. I know so many of you are absolutely always there, both here for us at Skeptic Haven. You're there every single new video that GE's got. You're out there in the community at large, and you guys make this stuff happen. I know I'm not going to get too deep into it. I don't want to say anything that I'm not supposed to, but what I'm going to say is this right here. I feel very confident there's a lot of us right now that are a little upset. We're having a bit of a tough time. I know. I understand. And honestly, a lot of times I just want to turn everything off. I want to shut the fuck down. And I just want to disappear for a little bit. I'm telling you, stay connected. I know I'm not fucking done. I know GE's not fucking done. I know none of us here behind the scenes at Skeptic Haven, all the amazing crew that we have, I know we're not done. Come back here, okay? If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling lonely, you got a space. If you're feeling angry, you're feeling like you want to fucking do something, you got a space. We're right here, okay? And if you just need a moment to just laugh and giggle about something, you got a space. We're right here, okay? Every single week, Sundays, 7 p.m., we're taking calls, but you know we got a lot of other great stuff going on here, y'all. Hang out with us, hang out with GE, just connect with somebody, okay? We're going to be around. We're not going anywhere. All right, love you guys. Go do something heathenous. I don't know, sacrifice something. See ya.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.